Assalamu alaikum, students and my viewers globally. This is Shahbaz, and I'm back here again with yet another English lesson. Before we get started, to remind you that this is now going to be the lecture of grammar series once again, and it's lecture number 10. But before we get started officially, um, let me re-announce this that very shortly you're going to have a few more good learning series to come. The first of which would be spoken English series, and it is almost ready to come. And with that, there is another series that I'm going to launch. It is going to be grammar in grams. So for that, you need to subscribe my channel if you haven't done it yet. Kindly subscribe it at the earliest and press the bell icon for getting continuing updates. So now, without further ado, let us get started to our lecture with our lecture. So, starting the time with the name of Almighty Lord is the most gracious and the most merciful. So, as you can see on the screen, that's grammar series, and in its lecture number 10 we are today. And the topic that I have for you today is the types of articles. Now, to remind you that the previous lecture featured the introduction of articles, and in that we talked about articles in detail, and specifically its two types, that's indefinite article a and the definite article the. So today we are going to talk about the first type of it as in its part number 1, and that part number 2 is going to come right after this lecture. So let us talk about our part number 1 of the types of article. So as you already heard that the type first features the indefinite article, which is a. Now when we talk about a, multiple things come in our mind. To remind you, the indefinite article is only one. This is what we have talked about already in our previous lecture, that people tend to understand that there are two indefinite articles, a and an. Now we have a genuine indefinite article, that is a, and by which we form an only to remove or jerk for those of words that begin from the sound of vowel. So that particular sound must carry an attachment, and to remove a jerk we attach an to those words. So because of that, artistically an was formed in order to fulfill the need. The only one thing that you must keep in mind right now, once again, is that there is only one indefinite article. Now let's get down to the business end already. So already we have talked about in our previous lecture that article a, that is indefinite article, only appears when there is a singular and a common noun, and with that it must be such a noun that starts from the consonant sound, the sound that doesn't carry a or as a sound in the beginning of it. It may sometimes start from vowel, apparently from a, e, I, o, u, but it may also carry the sound of consonant. So even with such words we should use a or a, that is what should be attached as a sound. Then when we use an, we only do so when there is a singular and a common noun as usual, but such a noun that should carry the vowel sound, the sound of a in the very beginning. This is what we have already talked about in the beginning, in our previous lecture. So let's take a quick example. Naseem Shah is a pacer. Now the pacer is a bowler, a fast bowler I would say, and then pacer is a noun. So articles are those adjectives which always come before noun. They are like adjectives, as in other words. So pacer is a noun, and since it begins from the apparent consonant, which is p, and with that it carries the sound of consonant as well, which is not beginning from a. It begins from other than a, then it is what a sound of consonant. So luckily this word apparently has the consonant word letter in the beginning and the consonant sound in the beginning as well, because of which I have attached a before it. So Naseem Shah is a pacer is a correct. Otherwise, it can never be said in the way what can be wrongly said. Nasim Shah is an pacer. Can never attach an because pacer has the sound of a consonant in the very beginning, as well as the parent consonant letter P. Now let me modify the very sentence even further. So as you can see, it's a consonant sound, because of which I have used only a before P, or the sound of pacer. Now the sentence is, Nasim Shah is an intelligent pacer. Now to read it like an Englishman, it would go like, Nasim Shah is is an intelligent pacer. Now removing the jerk, it's not an intelligent, as you already heard in the previous lecture. It's an intelligent, reading it without giving any kind of a stress in between. So now intelligent is another adjective, and that adjective actually begins from the apparent vowel, that is I, luckily, and uh, what is more noticed, it is actually, it begins from the vowel sound, which is a. Intelligent, it comes from a, so that is giving you the sound of a, which is why we have attached an intelligent. So it can never be said Nasim Shah is a intelligent, it gives you a jerk. So in order to remove the jerk, we would say Nasim Shah is an intelligent pacer. Hope this clarifies to you. Let's talk about the further ideas where we can attach indefinite article, both a as well as an. As you can see, it is the vowel and it has the vowel sound. Moving on. Now the first thing is, indefinite article, either it is a or n, comes before an undefined or non-specific noun. For example, a company is looking for a 25-year-old young man. Now, there are two, as you can say, nouns. The first of which is company, and the second is 25-year-old. It becomes noun. It is actually formed from multiple adjectives in between as well. So, both the nouns are common only because we are talking about any, as you can say, any singular company or any singular 25-year-old young man. Now, like we have talked about in the previous lecture, that indefinite article a or an comes from one or any or anyone. So this is why. So it's undefined company. There's no name attached, and there's no specified name of a person attached as well. So because of which we can only simply use indefinite article, and in this case in shape of a or a in the beginning of both company as well as 25-year-old young man. Taking more of the examples, it gets attached to those nouns mentioned for the first time. Now, a noun that gets mentioned for the first time is always common, but then when that same common noun gets mentioned for the second time, it becomes proper. We'll talk about it in our next lecture that is going to come right after this, but we focus on this point. Let's take an example. There is a gardener outside. The gardener is very poor. Now, the first part of the sentence has an introduction of a noun, that's gardener. A gardener, or any one gardener, what can be said. But then in the second sentence, the reference becomes automatically proper because it is revised to repeat it for the second time. And because of the repetition, we remove a, we replace the in place of a. So this is what we are going to talk about in the next lecture. For such a noun, we use as such as gardener, which is commonly expressed here. We use a before it. With a common collective noun, let's talk about it. A famous quotation of the 35th U.S. President, Mr. John F. Kennedy, who was born on 29th May. I mean, that's the day to come tomorrow, 1917. If I'm not wrong, yes, it is 1917, and died, and in fact killed on 22nd November, and that is during his service of his being president in 1963, unfortunately. So, who remained president for 2 years and 10 months, from say January 1961 to November 22nd, 1963, the day he was assassinated. One of the most important and one of the most quoted of his sayings has is right before you on the screen. Our progress as a nation can be no swifter than our progress in education. Now, our progress as a nation. Now, that nation is a common way to express any nation, any one nation. And if we replace a certain word which is people, P-E-O-P-L-E, people, you must have written it somewhere many times and you've heard it many times. So that people sometimes is a plural. It looks plural. But if we attach people here, it becomes an exact synonym of the word, as you can see on the screen, nation. When we talk about a nation, we talk about a singular nation. When we talk about a people, it also means a singular nation. So when we talk about a nation in common, then we can simply use the word nation as singular, as it is written before you on the screen, and we can simply replace people in place of nation. Then that people collectively gives you a singular opinion and a singular meaning. Very confusing, isn't it? So is there any plural version of people? Peoples, there is. We'll talk about it when we talk about the definite article. So that's one very important saying of Mr. John F. Kennedy, the 35th US President. And to remind it once again, our progress as a nation can be replaced as our progress as a people, very new to you. A people can be no swifter than our progress in education. So that's a common way to express when we talk about collective common noun. More of the ideas. The fourth of which is we attach an indefinite article, either a or an, with singular type of jobs, etc. For example, I am a teacher. I'm a teacher gives you that you are a teacher, a simple teacher. You're not actually refining yourself when you introduce yourself that you are the certain type of a teacher. He is a doctor. He is an engineer. Now, without having any stress, an engineer. Now, this is a common way to go. People tend to use things wrongfully here, talking about that he is engineer, that he must be the engineer. No, not at all. Any a common engineer, any a singular engineer. So, like myself is any a teacher, a singular teacher. So I am a teacher. This is the way to go. Now we use indefinite article with these numbers such as 100, 1000, and lakh, etc., and more of such combined elements of numbers. For example, there were over 100 people at the party. Now you must get confused that 100 is like more than one, and when we use more than one, it becomes plural. Certainly, it is plural, but when it is occupied and referred in a name and as a singular name of 100, then it becomes singular. So because of that singular idea, we use 100. Because there are 200s, there are 300s and 400s, so which is why 100 can be used as 100. So this is what is very simply defined. Common way to express that there are number of people which are 100 and that is only 100. And in an article's language we use it as 100 people at the party. And last but not the least, we use indefinite article before exclamations or any idea that comes out suddenly, and in writing when we attach exclamatory mark right at the end. So in exclamations such as what a nice dress, what an idea, what a way to do this, what a nice try. Well, many such expressions and exclamations come through, and by default we attach are always in between. We can never go for and, we can never go for the. Even when we specify some nouns, and when we talk about in their appraisals specifically, we can even never go for any other article than that of a. As you can see, what a nice dress. So I hope that clarifies you to the greater extent, and wait for my next lecture to come. That's all for now up to this point. Once again, there is a reminder, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, just do it now, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated, as there are much more newer strings to come in shape of spoken English series and grammar in grams. So I, Fazil Shahbaz Khan, officially take your leave, and until next time, it is goodbye.